So
Yeah,
how's things been with you?
dude. 1 year ago today, I was super sick, like 24% body fat, horrible gut, severe insomnia, like addicted to weed and a bunch of drugs. And I met my mentor 1 year ago today. And ever since then, like I've totally turned my life around, and it's honestly been a very wholesome moment to even consider. Because
Hell yeah.
1 year ago, like I was on this side of Twitter, like looking at everybody else's accounts, and I'm like, damn, like I know all of this stuff, but I'm not implementing anything, and I'm just so behind of what my potential could be. And now I'm on the freaking app, and I have a decent following now, and things are really starting to come full circle. So it's honestly just amazing, and I'm very grateful for everything that's happening right now that God's allowing into my life.
Let's go, dude. Yeah, that's a cool for full circle moment. So what was the flip of the switch? Like what particularly happened? Like what was it that the mentor told you that allowed you to go from knowing some of this stuff to actually implementing it?
Yeah, so I was a personal trainer for about a year, and one of my clients, I had been with him from the beginning until like the end.
Hmm.
And at first, when he first came in, he was like literally wheelchair bound. He was so sick. And by the end of it, this dude was leg pressing like 700 pounds.
Holy
And he
shit.
was lat pull downing like 300. And I'm like, you're 55 years old. Like, what are you doing to do that? Because I already knew about the health and that type of stuff. And he's like, oh, you got to go and meet this chiropractor up in North Scottsdale. Like, he's probably the best in the country, and like one of like the most gate kept doctors in the entire world. So I go and meet this guy, and I tell him everything, and he's like, "Oh, dude, we got to have higher standards now. Like, I'm gonna put you on, and I'm gonna teach you all this insane stuff, and your knowledge is gonna skyrocket, and you're gonna implement it, and you're gonna become a different person." And just by listening to his advice, I completely healed the gut. I'm about 85% of the way there right now, I'd say. I enhanced my knowledge probably like 100-fold. And even since then, like I used to have insomnia every night and like all these addictions, and I had horrible brain fog because I'd be ripping like weed and Adderall all the time. So he helped me to rebuild the brain on top of that. And now I'm very interested in the tropics and that type of stuff. And yeah, he basically just said like we gotta have higher standards, dude. But just seeing what he did with that dude who was in the wheelchair and transforming him, I was pretty hopeless before, and I thought that the medical system was so fucked because I'd always wanted to be a doctor, and out of nowhere I see like there's practitioners like this that are changing people's lives. So like I can easily get into that, and it really spoke to me at a subconscious level, I would say.
What was the protocol? What did he put you on?
Yeah,
What were some of the
so
things he was
to
doing?
fix the gut, it was very interesting. I did and I actually have been putting people onto this myself. So he said that you always want to start with the gut if you have issues like brain fog and that, and just the gut has an access to nearly everything in the body. So I did a very unique protocol because beforehand I was puking out stomach acid every night, and it was quite horrible. Like I had a horrible gut issue. Like I would eat a grain of rice and like be crawled up on the floor like begging for dear life. Like it was pretty horrible. So he said that the goal is to essentially don't eat carbs for a month and starve out all the bacteria, and then
Hmm.
replenish with good microbes by eating fermented foods during that process. So you're killing the bad stuff and adding the good stuff. But on top of that, you're getting infrared light from the sun every morning and the sun every evening to actually promote the growth of those. You're promoting the growth of those beneficial microbes. They did a study in Denmark, and essentially what happened in this study is they had two groups and they were both given antibiotics to improve their gut. So the antibiotics wiped out everything. And the point of the study was to replenish the microbiome, and they examined this. One group didn't get any sunlight. The other group got sunlight. The group that got the sunlight from the infrared light radiation, they it was crazy. They actually had amazing microbe growth and all of that. Whereas the group that didn't get the sunlight, that was under blue light all day, they had dog shit They had a horrible gut microbiome.
Wow. So
Yeah,
the sun
so
really influences
yeah,
the
so
microbes in our gut.
yeah, and even like a year and a half ago, like before I was healing, I was very interested in Grimhood. I
Hmm.
uh I
Shout
was
out
very
magnesium coffee.
because I was a pre-med student, so I was always a little bit interested in this stuff, but Grimhood was the OG for me. Like I would say he's probably my biggest influence to this day. Just like if it wasn't for Grimhood, I wouldn't have gotten like I wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, holistic health is actually very complex and intricate, and it isn't no joke. Like that stuff is very real and the science behind it. He's done an excellent way of paving the way for a lot of future people to come in and just like, take those principles of blue light exposure and an EMF toxicity and then really implement that into your life and kind of understand like you can either eat a very good diet or you can fix your light diet and then your diet isn't as big of a deal. And
Yep.
that's what he really showed a lot of people, I would say. But yeah, even a year and a half ago, like I actually think I followed you even in like the OG days, like on my OG Twitter account, like way back in the day.
So,
Followed you, Newt Bro, Grimhood, like like everybody pretty much. But I'd never thought that I would be a creator myself, and I just randomly started an account in August, and I was like, I kind of like posting content for people. It's fun,
oh
and
yeah,
just like
absolutely.
giving out health advice, that stuff. So I just kept doing it, and eventually the account just really started to grow, and now I have a pretty cool plan down the road.
Let's go, brother. Yeah, it's actually crazy how many people I've heard say that Grimhood has transformed their
Dude,
life, like in a very
that guy's
fundamental way.
like part of his like some of his protocols like saved my life. I didn't even know what GABA glutamate balance was, and I found
Crazy.
that out from him. And I just went down so many rabbit holes about GABA glutamate balance, and I essentially cured my OCD and anxiety by doing that and prioritizing the gut.
Dude, I know. It's crazy. I know somebody who they're a very big creator on Twitter. I won't out them because I don't know how publicly they want to talk about their own story, but they got put on so they got prescribed Adderall when they were in college, like a freshman
Yep,
in
me too.
college. And then that caused them to have anxiety, so they
Yep,
got prescribed an anti-anxiety drug.
yep. They tried to
And
put me
then
on Lexapro.
yeah, and then so the anti-anxiety drug caused them to be uh what's the word, like to not really have too many emotions, like they didn't
Anhedonia.
really feel. Yes, exactly, thank you.
Yeah,
And then they put them on an SSRI for that, and then the combination of all three of those things just absolutely made them have suicidal ideation and were just
yep,
like a miserable individual. um, and then they found Grimhood, and then they started looking at all these things like GABA glutamate balance, and they went from being like this incredibly depressed, thinking about committing suicide individual to like
yeah.
one of the
That's how I
biggest
was.
health creators on Twitter. It's like it's
Yeah,
absurd
like
how
I
many
literally wanted.
people.
I wanted to clock myself like every day, like literally even a year ago today, and like I started utilizing what Grimwood said, and I was like, well, I can't get much lower than this. Like I might as well give it a shot. And sure enough, it was the best decision I made in my entire life. So
Yeah.
I always like shill his products, but the reasoning for that is that they're so good and so
Oh
effective
yeah.
at actually altering your neurotransmitters and stimulating neurogenesis, some of them. So I think they're very rightfully shilled.
Yep.
That guy is,
What are your favorites from him? Like what are some things that you
yeah,
took away from his protocols?
yeah. So some of my favorites that I've done are I like Blue Lotus a lot. That's I would like to say that it just makes you feel good at night. And if you have, I live in a city right now, so I definitely have to deal with the EMFs, and it's not ideal. So my brain obviously gets overstimulated. So it's really good to just do some Blue Lotus, maybe a little bit of Malungu bark with that. And then another good one that I take in the daytime to just strengthen the brain is Bacopa. It's a really good one as well. But yeah, I've been very into nootropics the past year because obviously, as a former weed user and former Adderall user, my brain kind of got screwed. So, one of my two of my favorites are magnesium and the lion's mane as well. Those are very good.
Hell yeah, that's I'm on that right now. That's my pre-podcast stack right now. I've been doing
Good.
uh caffeine, a little bit of this stuff from Four Sigmatic, the Focus Blend mushrooms. Have you seen this stuff?
What is in
It's
there? What's I
it's
love
awesome.
mushrooms.
So um it's 500 milligrams of lion's mane,
Base.
250 milligrams of cordyceps.
Dude,
Um,
cordyceps is a crazy pre-workout.
Crazy, yes.
It's crazy.
Cacao and rhodiola rosea.
Oh, dude. So I'm actually coming
Great
out
blend.
with I'm actually coming out with the supplements for Focus in a few months. And I was
Nice.
going to talk
Let's
about
go.
that, but rhodiola is one of the main ingredients. And I think you've talked to New Bro before, but he uh he made it very aware to me along my journey that you should always look at the bioavailable constituents within a supplement. So you look at rhodiola, you want something like salidrasides in there that are going to make the rhodiola more potent. You're looking at lion's mane, you want more of the fruit body in there to make it more
Yeah.
potent. And then you can look at those ratios, and it's really good for just exacerbating the effect of everything that it's going to have on the brain. But yeah, it's a
Dude,
killer stack. I've
killer
discovered
stuff.
I've been into research chemicals lately. So this is bromantane. It
Mm,
You can think of bromantane as, imagine your brain is like a dopamine factory assembly. Bromantane just lubes up the machine. It
mm,
essentially enhances the enzyme function of tyrosine hydroxylase, helps make more tyrosine to L-DOPA conversion, and then that bumps up dopamine synthesis. And it's also GABAergic, and it's an adaptogen that's synthetic. So the Russians used it on their soldiers in the 1980s in order to actually let them be more resilient to like low oxygen conditions and high heat conditions.
I've heard incredible things about bromantane, and it
Dude, it's
seems like it
great.
has
I
a
just dropped like a big ass post on it. It's one of my favorite subs.
it and it's very safe too. It has a very the side
No
effect
addiction.
profile is
Yeah,
yeah,
no
literally
addiction.
nothing.
It's super safe. I take
Yeah.
about I've been experimenting for whatever reason. I tried 100 and I tried 50, and the 50 was more potent for me. So one thing I've learned anecdotally is that I've even heard some people say that 10 is the strongest for them. So one thing I've heard anecdotally is that you always have to play around with the dosage and see what's ideal for your own unique neurochemistry.
Yeah. 100%.
But yeah, it's
Cuz
killer for motivation. Like that's one that you can take 5 to 7 times a week without having any problems realistically.
and that one, so yeah, the I haven't taken it personally. I've heard great things about it. So what it does really is it upregulates dopamine in the brain, so
Yeah.
you're just more motivated to do things.
Yeah. So it's going to motivate you. It's going to increase libido. It might even increase natural energy as a result of increasing stress resilience.
Mm.
And then, yeah, it's essentially just going to be like motivation maxing. And then if you
Oh,
combine
awesome.
that with something like L-tyrosine or Subroxy, even, you're allowing your brain to make even more dopamine, which is very key
Mm.
in our day and age because people wake up, they scroll on their phone, they just dick around on their phone all the time, and basically everything we're doing in our environment is abusing our reward system. So it's very important that's why I like the modern, a lot of people will say like our ancestors didn't do this, our ancestors didn't do that. Well, our ancestors didn't also have that level of stimulation to their reward system. So I believe that if you're not living like an extremely ancestral lifestyle, that there are ways to get around that. And that's why I love biohacking personally.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like I think that when you first start thinking about health, you think about things through that like ancestral lens.
Yeah,
Um, but the understanding of like, okay, modern life
it's different.
requires
We
some
have more
modern
toxins.
solutions. Yeah.
Yeah, this actually it upregulates. I believe it's cytochrome P450, and that helps with liver detoxification,
Interesting.
which is huge because we have so many toxins in our environment, and if your liver detoxification pathways aren't firing, your body's kind of just like you're toxin maxing, and there's only so much saunaing you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the sauna, I mean, the sauna is something like so good for that detox, though. Like we've
Dude, I
just
do
proven
like I probably do about 20 minutes 3 times a week at 210. It's amazing.
at 210.
Hmm.
You a psycho, bro. That's
Dude,
awesome.
I once did 40 minutes at 210. I
Wow.
I was like deep into breath work while I was doing it, and I started to so I've done psilocybin before, and
Yep.
I started to experience the exact same sensations as when I was on that.
That is amazing. I
It
one
was
time
crazy, man.
I love that. I mean that the whole the breath work in combination with sauna and cold plunge is
Dude,
quite fascinating. Like
dude,
if
yeah.
there was
I've been
yeah,
talking with Bass Bra a lot lately, and he's been like opening up the door for breath work for me, and it's been very powerful.
hell yeah.
That
I
guy is like the go to breath work.
he's a pretty mindful dude. I've hung out with him in person.
Dude,
He's
he's
very
awesome.
grounded.
Yeah,
He's a
dude, he's
cool
an
dude.
awesome dude.
There was one time I have you ever do you know what Russian bathhouse is? Have you ever seen those places?
No,
So the Russians have these bathhouses, they call them, and they just have like a bunch of saunas, cold plunges,
bro,
and
that's crazy.
they're awesome, dude. So that there's one by me in New Jersey, and I went one time, and I kind of had the place to myself. Um, so I was like, all right, like I'm gonna almost try to give myself like a psilocybin or like DMT trip in combination with
Yep.
like
No, yeah, you
pushing the
can.
extremes of
It's
this.
crazy.
And you could get pretty damn extreme, like pretty damn close to a
Yeah.
full on trip when you just combine these things. It's pretty
Oh, dude,
nuts.
it's ridiculous. Like, so this last Sunday, I did a 200 milligrams psilocybin, so just a little micro dose, but it hit me pretty hard because I did it fasted, and then I did 5 minutes in the sauna, and then 5 minutes in the ice bath afterwards, and it was like the best I felt in my entire life.
Whoa,
It was crazy.
that's a
Like,
crazy stack right there.
yeah, it's an amazing stack. And then I just kind of sat there and I created systems to improve essentially things that I felt that needed improvements in my life.
Mm,
So I like psilocybin because it makes us very introspective and we really dig into that subconscious of ours and really see what's
mm,
going on there. Because a lot of people, they have a bunch of clutter in their subconscious and it manifests as uncertainty, anxiety, OCD. So it's really good to actually self reflect instead of avoiding that stuff, I feel.
100%. Yeah, it's it's not like it's not a thing that you could prescribe to everybody, obviously, because there
No,
are
if you have any risk of schizophrenia, stay
yeah,
away. Like run for the
totally.
hills because it can very much so potentiate that potential to happen.
Absolutely, yeah. It's something to do with the abundance of caution, but the um the ability, the perspective that it gives you of like this third person point of view of yourself
Yes,
is
that is a great
incredibly beneficial.
articulation. That's amazing. Yes, 100%.
Um yeah, I definitely think that there's a ton of benefits for just like you were kind of saying, like you just see things so much more objectively within yourself and you're like, okay, this is where I'm coming short. This is where I'm not self-actualizing enough. Like there's so
Dude,
much
yes,
good
like
that can come from that self-reflection.
yeah, I really like what Noah Ryan said about it, though, in terms of being careful. He said, don't become
Totally.
the spiritual narcissist where you think that, like, you're spiritually ahead of everyone. Like, it's not a competition with others in my mind. Rather, it's a competition with myself and how can I be the best? And then a byproduct is, sure, you can surpass people, but that's besides the point. Like, you're trying to be the best person that you can be. And the more you actually allow your competition with others to enter your consciousness, I feel that it can take away from your own goal and the big picture of that.
Yeah, dude, totally. That comparison game is it's a very dangerous trap, and it's an
It's
easy
a
one to
thief of
fall into.
joy.
Yeah, it's a thief of joy. It's a great way to put it. And like, especially with social media nowadays, it just gets um, exacerbated to a degree that
Dude, it's
it's
so bad.
crazy.
I think
Yeah,
like I always say that I think I was born in the wrong generation. I would have like I like how I have access to all these studies and stuff, and I have access to all these nootropics. I can order any of them anytime, but I think like being born in the 50s would be really cool. But I think that it's a positive and a negative having access to this much technology because the way we can treat ourselves is just that much better.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. The modern age, it definitely has its pros and its cons, but
Yeah.
the I love the analogy of we're like a cactus in a rainforest. Like we're built for a world of just pure abundance, and we live in one of, or we're built for a world of scarcity, and we live in one of total
Of
abundance.
abundance. Like you can go to
So
Amazon and buy whatever the hell you want at any time.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there's pros and there's cons, but modern life definitely poses some unique challenges that uh, at least you have some pretty incredible people out there with the information to help equip you and to
Yeah. Yeah, I think
help you
that
live that life.
yeah, and I think that fighting a lot of these compulsions in the modern day, it really comes back to the concept of spiritual warfare, whether that's from a monotheistic perspective, a pantheistic perspective, whether you believe in the universe, whether you believe in God, like at the end of the day, it's good versus evil, in my opinion. And you have to do your best to strive for good, but you're also not going to be perfect, I think.
Totally, 100%. And you just wrote a incredibly detailed thread on fat loss.
Dude,
Uh, what'd
yeah,
you learn about that when you did that deep dive?
dude, that has been like an accumulation of my research over the past like 3 years. So, like, that's probably, I turned it into an ebook and it was 130 pages.
Whoa,
But
that's
yeah, man,
insane.
I've been researching that stuff for a while. Last year, when I first started this journey, literally a year ago today, 24% body fat. Today, 13% body fat. Still striving. I want to get to 8 and just really dial in my physique. But I like to view this as like this podcast as a little timestamp in history because I'm going to be talking about what I know. I'm going to be talking about my perspective. And then, like 3 years later, I'm going to look back at this episode and be like, look at all that's changed.
Absolutely. Hell yeah.
So it's definitely,
That's a beautiful
like,
thing about these type of things, these type of
yeah, man,
conversations.
that fat loss is there's so much you have to consider. Like, it's not just one thing that you can do. Like, you can't just lower your calories and expect to keep that off forever because your metabolism will adjust homeostatically. And there's just so much that's going on. Like, if you're eating a lot of PUFAs, especially in the summertime, it's going to accumulate in your fat cells and it's going to be the last fat to go, essentially. It's going to take longer. Whereas if you're eating simple sugars and saturated fat, you're going to fly through that stuff just if you're active. So that's why I keep my diet mostly to simple carbohydrates and saturated fats. And then I love olive oil too. I'm Greek and Italian, so that's the other one. But I stay away from PUFAs unless they're omega 3s, essentially. And the omega 6 to 3 ratio is personally one of my favorite things to talk about because it's highly regulatory of how your body signals inflammation pathways.
So let's dive
So,
into that.
yeah, if you have let's say you have like an omega, so ideally our ancestors, they had an omega 6 to 3 ratio of 1 to 1 or either 4 to 1. But in the current day, the average omega 6 to 3 ratio, it's nearly at what is it, 25 to 1, like right
Yeah,
around there.
I've heard
Yeah,
crazy things
and that's because of the
of
seed oils
in favor of
realistic.
omega sixes, of course.
Yeah, yeah, in favor of omega 6s. So essentially what happens is you have these omega 6s in your body and people have so many of them at this point. When you have an omega 6 to 3 ratio of like 25 to 1, you're chronically inflamed at that point and you're just pro-inflammatory cytokine maxing. And when you get to about a ratio of 50 to 1, I found you're essentially just waiting for your cancer diagnosis. And then when you get to a ratio of around 75 to 1, your chances of developing some sort of severe mental illness is heavily impacted because the inflammatory signaling in your brain just becomes such a detriment to yourself.
Yeah.
And so the way that it really works is you start off with linoleic acid. That's the bad guy. I'm sure you've heard like dudes like Paul Saladino go over that, but linoleic acid goes down a series of conversion, and then there's an enzyme called delta. I think it's delta 5 desaturase, might be delta 6 desaturase. Regardless, though, that enzyme it turns the linoleic acid byproduct into something called arachidonic acid, and too much arachidonic acid it activates certain prostaglandins and activates the COX-2 enzyme, and those are heavily inflammatory. So your body is just living in a state of inflammation, and it really is just one of the worst things you can do. And guess what activates that delta 5 desaturase enzyme? A big ass
Omega
insulin
sixes.
response.
Oh shit.
So let's say you go to McDonald's and eat their fries that are white potatoes that have a relatively higher glycemic index coated in seed oils. It's a double whammy of inflammation because you're allowing that delta 5 desaturase to actually work at a greater capacity and then convert more of that linoleic acid byproducts into that arachidonic acid. And that's just one of the many components of why seed oils are quite horrible for you.
The CETO conversation and this like omega 3 to omega 6 ratio component, it's fascinating because like so many of the studies don't take place on a long enough time frame
Yep. Yep.
to
It's just 4 month
actually
studies
show.
with zero
Yeah.
confounding variable control. And you have dudes, like, no offense, but there's some dudes that will look at studies and not understand how to actually read a study and see the limitations, the delimitations. They have zero understanding for context and they only care about data. And I think that is rooted in a lack of understanding for the mechanism first going into reading that study.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, with how omega 6s are stored in the body and how long of a process it is to see the negative impact of them.
Dude,
It's like
it
you
takes
just
like the half life of a linoleic acid is about 358 days, I believe. It might be even longer. So it takes years to detox from seed oils,
crazy.
like
So,
literal years. That's what vitamin E is actually very good at aiding in that process. And then EPA it's an omega 3 fatty acid found in fish. It is very good. That's why you'll see a lot of the people in this space recommend fish and fatty fish in general. The EPA in there actually it offsets that inflammation that's coming from the omega 6 pathways. So I believe that it limits the delta 5 desaturase enzyme, the EPA,
mm,
and it's very effective at just mitigating the inflammation. Is it a permanent solution? No. Is it going to help you while you're detoxing from the seed oils and the excess omega 6s? Yes. I believe that's why the Mediterranean diet works pretty well because, yes, they're eating a lot of seeds and nuts and things high in omega 6s, but they're also getting their oleic acid from olive oil and they're eating a
yeah,
lot of EPA via seafood.
yeah, and also like when you the amount of linoleic acid or omega 6 fats that you would get from eating nuts is not even close to the amount you would get when
Not even
it's
close. Yes.
like pressed into an oil.
Yeah, so
It's
safflower
two
oil,
totally different
about
worlds.
safflower oil is about 1 tablespoon of it is roughly 5 grams of linoleic acid, I believe.
Mm,
So you're literally maxing on that. Like that's horrible how much that is.
yeah,
You're not
absolutely.
supposed to
So
be going above what is it, like zero point 0.2 to 2 grams of linoleic acid daily. I can't confirm that, but I believe that I read that somewhere. And it's just it's not good because people are eating that food every day. And then you have companies like Chipotle that are marketing their product as a health food, which great, everything's organic. I love that. But if you're going to put 2 tablespoons of sunflower oil and 2 tablespoons of rice bran oil into my food, like I'm not going to buy your product.
yeah, I mean it sucks because you don't want to be too neurotic about your
Yeah, you don't
health.
want
I
to be a
think
weirdo
that's
about it. Like that's why I follow a 90-10 diet personally. So 90% of the time I'm excellent about it and 10% of the time I indulge. But I'm very serious about keeping my light environments at bay because when you're functioning and you're dialed onto a very good circadian rhythm and your light diet is very good, it really does mitigate the bad aspects of having a poor diet. Like you're more resilient in that sense. So my advice to anyone is really just try to mitigate EMFs, ground your feet, touch the bare earth, go into the natural bodies of water. Don't look at blue light before after the sunset. And then that's going to allow your nutrition to have more leeway there.
for sure, dude. And then um, the other side of that, so like doing the things like you were saying with the vitamin E and the EPA to mitigate the negative
Yeah.
effect of that when you are
Yeah.
at restaurants or whatever it may be, and you're getting the seed oils or just as a byproduct of life.
Yeah.
Do you? What's there's a bit of a confusion when it comes to fish oil like
Oh
supplementation,
man.
because there's people who
I knew that was
say
coming.
it's the best thing in the world, and then there's other people who
Yeah, and then they say it's
say
the
with the
worst thing
oxy.
in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
Have you done the deep dive on that? What are your thoughts when it
Yeah,
comes to
so
fish oil?
if you're going to do fish oil, and it's even a risk if you do this, unless you really know about the third party testing, realistically, you should be doing anything that's pharmaceutical grade and molecularly distilled. And you should actually look at the certificate of analysis to make sure that that's all good. Like, that should be your big goal out of that because when you're looking at fish oil, man, they can heat it up and it can get rancid very easily. And yeah, that's like the whole reason that we're avoiding seed oils, right? Because we don't want to eat rancid oils that have a bunch of toxic byproducts like 4-HNE, 913 HOD, those types of things. Like they're horrible for you and they cause a lot of inflammation and a lot of free radicals. And it's just not good for your oxidative stress and it's not good for your body to homeostatically try to fight against that level of inflammation. Like it surpasses the benefits of what hormesis would be, and it's just basically a shit show.
Yeah,
So I would honestly recommend just trying to get your omega 3s from actual fish. That's what I do. But some good brands that are pretty base from what I've seen is Rosita cod liver oil, and then Nordic Naturals cod liver oil. I prefer cod liver oil because it's just less likely to be rancid at the end of the day. And it's also going to give you natural, I believe it's naturally occurring vitamin A in there, retinol,
yep.
which is great for your circadian biology. Vitamin A is very important. So that's why I
Great for your
also
skin
like
health
liver.
too.
What was that?
Yeah, great for your skin health too. The vitamin
Dude,
A
yeah,
plays
skin
a huge
health.
role.
I've been into some skin health. I've been pairing the GKU CU copper peptide or
Hmm.
GHK. I forget the exact name of it, but it's that blue stuff, and I just smear that on my face and then combine some methylene blue tallow balm from
Nice.
Meraki Medicinal. Shout out to the best brand, but I do that combo with a little bit of vitamin E, and I have like my skin's good year round. I never really have
Hell yeah.
problems with that, even when I go out in the sun.
That is a great gift to give to, females love
Dude, yeah,
like
they
the
love
skin
that.
health products. That it's a I definitely have gifted that to the women in my life.
Dude,
The
they love
Mere
yeah,
Skin copper peptide. That is a
yeah.
great skin hair product or skin product to
Yeah,
give as a
some of the
gift.
best on the market, and the best part is that they don't have BS toxins that
Yep,
absorb into your skin and then kind of cause that endocrine disruptor effect where you see
absolutely.
nowadays fertility rates are dropping lower than ever. And I believe that that's partly due to the level of endocrine disruptors in the environment and how inconsistent that is with our evolutionary past.
Absolutely. And you and me have been talking off air a good amount about lab work lately.
Dude,
And
I'm obsessed.
you've been doing the deep dive into
I'm
testing
obsessed,
and
man.
and reading the biomarkers. What have you learned from that pursuit so far?
Yeah, so it's definitely a journey because I like to take it one at a time. But something really cool that I learned is that when they're assessing for magnesium deficiency, it almost always comes back normal for
Yeah.
people. And it's just very stupid to test how much magnesium is in your blood. You should be checking how much magnesium is in your red blood cells. Because when you're deficient in magnesium, the first place that your body is going to pull from is the red blood cells. So you would actually get a far more accurate depiction of whether you're deficient in magnesium or not if you check the red blood cells.
Well, and the thing is, like, if you're showing on a blood test that you're deficient in magnesium, it's a very extreme deficiency. Like
Yes, extreme. That's the issue. A lot of
extreme, because
doctors,
the body will do all it can do to keep the magnesium in the blood.
yeah, man.
Like,
A lot of physicians, they're just checking for, like, are you healthy enough to just get by? That's what they're really looking for in the blood work.
yeah,
And those reference ranges that they give you typically, that's based on the remainder of the population. And you look at our world right now, specifically America, the average person in America is fairly sick. They're chronically inflamed. They likely have a degree of insulin resistance. They have most likely skewed levels of leptin, and I would actually presume that a lot of these ranges that they have, they aren't optimal at all. And that's why a lot of people, like even a lot of people on X that had to heal themselves, they go to the doctors and even in my case, they said, nope, all the blood work came back normal. But I even looked at my old blood work recently and it was very evident to me that I had leaky gut. But since the reference ranges were so skewed, the doctor
hmm
never even called that out or recognized that as a disease because the majority of our research funding is going towards pharmaceutical drugs instead of understanding the scientific truth behind these. And then you have a whole entire niche of people saying, the evidence doesn't say this. No shit, Sherlock, because the evidence is only looking at pharmaceutical drugs right now for the most part. So it's just a big systematic problem. And even when you look at who is doing the research and who created the peer review system, Ghislaine Maxwell's father is the one who created the peer review system. So there's a lot of issues deep into research that need to be resolved, I believe. And even somebody who used to work for a research lab and really looked into that stuff, you really get to see firsthand how difficult it is to get a great topic funded by the
oh yeah,
NIH.
that is the truth. Yeah, you need to have that funding behind it, and the easiest way to get that funding behind it is to be with a pharmaceutical company in some capacity.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but those optimal ranges, dude, it's such a game changer.
Dude,
Like,
I love to ask people. I'll be like, send me your blood work now, and I'll analyze it because it's great practice for me because that's what I'm
oh yeah,
looking to do. Mainly on X, just I want to like help people with their random issues that physicians can't seem to treat because the majority of the time the reality is that they're probably sick and it's not showing in their blood work according to the physicians at least, but it's very detectable actually when you
yeah,
when you actually look at the optimal reference ranges. So I'm in the process right now of putting together what the optimal reference ranges would be for certain biomarkers like your HSCRP, your red blood cell magnesium count, your
yeah.
estradiol, just all of those different things. I think it's very important to consider. And even your lipid panel, like they'll try to put people on statins because they'll say your LDL is above 110. Like realistically, your LDL can go all the way up to 150 if you have a good triglyceride to HDL ratio and a low LPA. And then your pattern of LDL is obviously leaning more towards the sides of being fluffier and bigger rather
hmm
than being more dense and small, like those LDL B particles that you'll see.
Yep. Yep. I mean, shout out Labify. A little shameless self
Dude,
plug here, but
Labify, the
the
goat. Everyone needs
yeah,
to hop on that.
but yeah, dude, the optimal reference ranges was one of the big reasons why I wanted to do that. because I mean, it's just such a game changer. Like if you get back your results and you have optimal ranges, it just allows you to have
Dude,
so much
yes.
more of an understanding of what to do. It
Yes,
is.
like I lost it when I saw that, man. You dropped that. I was like, this is God's work.
I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it. A lot of work, but went behind it. But I mean, I to your point about like a lack of understanding when it comes to reading blood work. I
Yeah.
tweeted this out yesterday, but like I had someone come to me and they were like, yeah, I've very high cholesterol and very low vitamin D, so I'm supplementing and
Uh,
avoiding saturated
you
fat
know what that
and that
is?
type of thing. What?
So if you have high cholesterol and low vitamin D, the UV radiation actually helps convert the cholesterol byproducts into vitamin D, and it helps balance and retain normal cholesterol levels to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, but there, I mean, there's so much more nuance there because there's so
Yes,
many different like you need to see that whole picture of all their markers to
dude.
actually treat them because so I looked at their results and they had very high mercury. And if you look at
Oh, geez.
mercury, the the body's purposely keeping vitamin D low as a protective mechanism, and it's
Yes,
keeping cholesterol high as a protective mechanism.
yes,
Um, so it's like
precisely.
if you just get rid of the mercury, like both those things are just going to balance themselves out. Like
Yeah,
it's
and the typical physician will just put you on a statin when they're not realizing like how much
yep,
deeper of a picture it really is.
100%, dude,
Like it's just
100%.
not good.
Yeah, I I I was working for this guy. I did like this mentorship program,
Yeah.
who does lab work with professional athletes, and he
Wait,
had
what's his
someone who
name?
came to him, Dan Garner.
Oh yeah, that guy's. You recommended him to me. That guy's goaded.
That guy's special, dude. He's a incredible. I
Brian
highly recommend
Walsh.
everyone.
You know
Who?
who that is? Brian Walsh.
I don't know who Brian Walsh is.
Dude, he's
No,
one of the goats for blood work. Like he's
interesting. I gotta check out his work.
that guy is a G.
Brian Walsh. What have you learned from him? Have any particular takeaways?
Yeah, he taught me some his content taught me some cool stuff. For example, you're supposed to look at like when they send blood work back to a company, they're supposed to review that like 20-ish times and make sure that everything's in order. But most of
Mm-hmm.
the time they don't actually do that and it's very inadequate. But he also talks about the gold standard of hormone testing because let's say you're getting your estradiol tested or your testosterone at 9 a.m. every morning, you're not looking at how that's fluctuating throughout the day. But when you do something like the gold standard of that test would be the Dutch test,
Oh
because
yeah.
you're actually
Shout out
using that
Labify.
urine
We sell
test.
that.
Yeah, and you're looking at the 24-hour cycle and you're looking at the upstream and downstream metabolites of everything. And it gives you a very complete picture of why you might be deficient in those hormones.
Yep. I
Or
mean, that's the
even
truth.
you can get an adrenal stress index from somewhere like Direct Labs, and that's going to be very good to measure like is this the reason why I have no energy all day.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's hard though, like with those to know like what to do about them. Like
Yeah,
it's they're hard to get actionable advice. Like you're like, okay, like definitely the hormone, definitely having a hormone issue there, but those next steps with it, that's why it's so important to have someone who like sees the full picture of things to
precisely,
help you.
because
Yeah.
they're going to be able to be like, all right, we got to intervene right here in the pathway,
Yeah.
and this is the reason why this is happening. So we're going to do this intervention, and then it might take a little bit longer than if you were to hop on a pharmaceutical, but it's going to fix it in the long run rather than just masking it and inducing more symptoms. Like you have
Yep.
no idea how many people will go out there, hop on an SSRI, and then need Cialis afterwards for their freaking erectile dysfunction from that. It's unbelievable that you just give pill after pill. And that's going to bring me into one of my favorite topics that I love to talk about for health, deuterium. Now,
Deuterium.
yeah, so you can think of deuterium as hydrogen's obese cousin. It's just hydrogen with an extra neutron. It's fatter. And when you're looking at the mitochondria, you have your electron transport chain with complexes 1 through 4. And then what happens once you get to complex 5, otherwise known as ATP synthase? There's a gradient by the end of it all. So hydrogen, there's a lot of hydrogen on top above in the inner mitochondrial membrane, and it wants to flow outside because in the cell it always wants to be at equilibrium or homeostasis. So hydrogen will naturally flow down its gradients, also because of electrochemical reasons, but it's going to naturally flow down its gradient through the ATP synthase rotor. It's going to provide the energy for the rotor to spin and alter its configurations. And then that's what creates ATP, and that's what creates oxygen and your cellular water. So that's very important because ATP is our body's energy currency, obviously. So you want that hydrogen to be smooth, flowing down nice and smooth. But when you have a ton of deuterium, since it's fatter, it's actually clogging the rotor and making it less efficient, and you're producing less energy over time.
Interesting.
So
Okay,
yeah,
so
so that's why I'm actually not a big fan of eating fruits out of season, because plants love to store their deuterium in fruits because that's what you pick off of it. But
mm,
sunlight is the best thing you can do to detox yourself from deuterium. So that's why I say like go carbs galore in the summer. Like that's the
mm.
wave. But even the current water that we have is higher in deuterium than it used to be in days past. And that's why I do like structured water or spring water on top of that. But yeah,
Have you
deuterium is essentially when they create pharmaceutical products, it's very, very, very high in deuterium. Like you'll look at the molecular structure, and instead of hydrogen sticking off on the end, it's a bunch of deuterium molecules. And that's why you see a lot of people who hop on these pills, not to mention all of the other side effects, but they do have a very good degree of mitochondrial dysfunction that takes a very long time to fix. And that's
mhm.
why I love methylene blue, because while you're suffering during that journey of healing, you can take methylene blue that serves as an electron donor that's actually going to help you out while you're healing, because no, methylene blue doesn't like automatically fix that, but it sort of acts as something that's going to make you feel a little bit better while you're actually healing your mitochondria.
So so far we've been a bit high in the clouds for people who are listening in terms of like we're getting into the nitty gritty and the specifics of it
Yeah.
all. So um let's try to break down some stuff in terms of like actionable insights for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Of
Let's
course.
go let's go like let's get 5 things, 5 actionable insights people should be doing to help their health with these things that we mentioned in mind. What are you thinking? What do you have in
Yeah.
mind here?
So, step one, don't look at blue light before sunset and after sunset. And on top of that, look at every sunrise and sunset. Go outside during the day. So that's the first thing. Get your light environment fixed. The second thing, move. Sitting down all the time is not good, especially if you're eating carbohydrates. You really need to utilize that for energy. Third, I would say just cut out the ultra processed foods. You're going to be avoiding seed oils in that sense to begin with, for the most part. And yeah, just cut those out. They add a bunch of additives that are very bad for your health. Um, Fourth, let me think about this one. I would say that to optimize your hormones, just throw out the beauty products that have all these chemicals in it. Opt for something more natural like tallow, yeah, tallow balm, or even a copper peptide. And always do your own research on peptides, of course. It's always not medical advice, just always do your own research on that. And then opt to actually change out those, speak with your physician on this, of course, but it should be your goal to get off of that pharmaceutical ideally and switch to something more natural for the sake of your mitochondria and for the sake of all the other side effects that you're going to be experiencing. And then five is don't trust everything that like just because somebody's wearing a lab coat or just because somebody works for the government doesn't mean that they know everything. So you can always be your own physician. Go on PubMed. We have access to that nowadays. This isn't the 1980s where only the doctors and researchers had access to those papers. So advocate for yourself, be your own doctor. And then,
Mhm.
yeah, that's what I would say are the five actionable things I would, that's probably like the blueprints to really figuring this stuff out. Obviously, the nitty and gritty is fun to get into, but that's the basis in all reality. It's light environments, fixing your sleep and circadian rhythm, nutrition, and movement.
Totally. Totally. And to the last point, like doctors go into debt to go to medical school, and then they become physicians, and they're given a very tight leash in terms of what they're allowed to do and to um, help you out with. They have a very strict um, protocol. If someone has X, mess around outside of the
No,
standard treatment of
yeah,
care. So on top of that, it's like sometimes you need to have somebody who's a bit outside of the medical system to treat things at a root cause level, not because doctors are ignorant or dumb, but just because of the way that they are incentivized, and for the fear of losing their medical license, like you almost need to
precisely. Yes, there's
treat someone
actually
outside of that.
if you, so let's say that you're a physician and you're trying to get like a comprehensive blood panel for somebody in their 20s who is at lower risk of having any problems. Certain insurance companies will actually lower your rates and they'll threaten to take away some of your money, and they can contact the Department of Justice, which can be really bad. So I
Oh
wanted to
yeah.
go to medical school since I was a very young kid. My grandmother passed away from medical malpractice before I was even born, and my mom had a bunch of miscarriages before that. And a week after my grandmother passed away, my mom found out that she had me, or that she was going to have me. So I was the first kid, and I do consider that to be a miracle. And part of my mission on this earth is righting the wrongs of how messed up the medical system really is. So ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a physician, and I wanted to like be the one that went in there and helped out, actually help people and save stuff. But when I like the more I learned about medicine, like even this was right after I took my MCAT, did very well, finished my GPA, worked really hard at it throughout all of college. I kind of discovered that the feasibility of becoming a physician and helping people right off the bat is low. I believe that it's just going to be more difficult to practice medicine in the way that I see it fit. So you're not going to be able to give those comprehensive metabolic panels. You're not going to be able to have an hour to 2 hours spending with the patient. You're going to have less time than normal if you're working for a public medical practice. So that's why within the next 10 years, I will be starting my own medical practice where I do have physicians working with me that are partners of the clinic. And it's going to be both remote and in person, and it's going to follow a more comprehensive care approach rather than just just treating the symptom and doing that. Like it's and
100%.
it's also not going to be like the naturopaths that will charge you $500 and give you and sell you a bunch of their supplements. It's going to be a nice balance of where we change up lifestyle things, hold you accountable to it, and then really track in and dial in that progress every freaking week if we have to. Like I'm even thinking about having people working for the practice that are just there merely to help like coach people through it and kind of be there as like a friend for them along the journey, because I think that's really
Totally.
important. But yeah, that's my grand vision for everything.
Hell yeah, dude. I think that's a beautiful way to approach things, and I mean it's so needed. And um, for a little bit of a cheat code here for people, if they want to, if they're like, okay, I want to read some medical studies, maybe try to help myself and help educate myself, but I look at these studies and I have no clue how to read them. Chat GPT, if you have Chat GPT 4, there's like
And there's an
certain.
extension. It's called Scholar AI.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going with this.
Yeah, it's really good, man. Because I'll read the whole study. I even had a club in college where I like taught people how to break down the structure of different studies and read them. and understand the context. So I have a great understanding of how research works, really. But I did this Chat GPT thing, and it was very accurate. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
was like scared of how accurate that was.
Yeah, it's a very cool
Like
way
it's
to
crazy, dude.
understand studies. Yeah. How have you
I
been using it
actually
so far?
I created my own GPT.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's called Decentralized Health GPT, and it's an AI that has like all of the base medical advice from Twitter.
Let's go.
Yeah, so
That's
you need
awesome.
ChatGPT 4 to use it, but you'll type in something like how do I detox from seed oils? And it'll give you like all of the advice instead of saying like eat a bunch of seeds and nuts like normal AI tells you.
That is awesome. Very, very cool, bro. Um, anything we haven't talked about today that you think is fundamental or just worthy of us chatting about?
Let me think. It's the one thing I love to express to everybody is that we are not our ancestors, so don't be afraid to get into a little bit of biohacking and don't be afraid of like, oh, this randomized placebo double controlled study said this. Like, honestly, there's dudes like Anabology out there that are laying out the roadmap for this, and I love it. Just experiments and be safe, obviously, but do your own research and tinker around with stuff. Like everybody says that the FDA banned bromaintanes, so it's a lethal weapon to society. Like it's really not if you look into the research of it, and I've been running it for a while now, and it's really changed my life for the better personally. So don't be afraid to just dive in there and ask people questions, put the ego to the side, and just yeah, ask them that stuff and really get into that.
That's the truth right there, brother. I so appreciate you doing this today. This was a lot of fun to just talk shop and explore some of these topics, and I think that really prioritizing that sunlight movement, cutting out those ultra processed foods, having this fundamental understanding of being your own doctor in a way. I think that
Yes.
is such a great way to think about things, and I appreciate you shedding some light on it today.
Yeah. One more thing I want to throw in there is
Hell yeah,
don't be afraid to like DM somebody that knows a lot on Twitter and ask them to like read your blood work or something rather than trusting the physicians every single time. Like don't be afraid to do that and just reach out and ask people for help. If I would have never went to my mentor and asked him for help, I wouldn't be where I am today and I wouldn't have nearly the same amount of knowledge. And just like it's a matter of putting the ego aside instead of saying, oh, I already know this stuff. It's all on lockdown. If I ask somebody else for help, I'm inferior. No, you're not.
hmm
You're on your own journey and you're becoming the best version of yourself. So if somebody is ahead of you in something in life, go and ask him like something to teach you and then use that to propel yourself upwards and become the best version of yourself.
I think that's a great insight, and I think people are would be shocked with how much people read DMs and respond to DMs. Like
Yeah.
before I started the podcast, I didn't realize how many people with massive followings actually are active in their DMs and are
Oh yeah,
responding to
100%.
people. Like you DM people to come on the pod, and you get some responses from very very big people who
Yeah,
you never
very
would have
big
thought would
accounts.
respond.
I've
Yeah.
had that happen.
So yeah, don't be afraid to DM people, and there's definitely a lot of wisdom that can be distilled from that. I think that that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
great
this
piece
is,
of wisdom
it
there.
really is the future of decentralized health, just communicating online with people and being like, "Can you help me out with this? I'm really
Yep.
struggling and none of the physicians are helping me at all." Like, just take that initiative, reach out to someone like and a lot of the people on this platform specifically, they have gone through living hell with their health and they're just so ready to just get deep in the game and help people. Like
Yep.
even I'm helping people free of charge right now because I know how freaking horrible it is to go through that type of stuff, and I never want anybody to truly experience that for a long period of time. And I think it means the world to me that to just be able to help other people and kind of turn this full circle situation into the idea that it's my turn now that I figured out how to heal my illness. It's my turn to do a favor for the world.
Beautifully said, brother. Appreciate you doing this, dude. This was a lot of fun today.
Yeah, of course, man. It was a pleasure.
Where do you want to send people to if they want to keep up with you, the stuff that you're doing, stuff you're
Yeah,
writing
yeah.
about?
So I'm primarily working on X right now. So just if you need any help with anything, just look me up on X, the Mito Bro, TheMito Bro. And then yeah, like my DMs are wide open. I've been reading a bunch of people's blood work lately. I've been having a lot of fun doing it. So if anybody that's listening to this needs any help, more than happy to chip in and then give you my insight on everything.
Hell yeah, brother. Awesome. Thank you for doing this, dude.
Yeah, man.
Let's go.
Dude,